Hello once again, Monster Hobbies adventurers. Are you ready for another building? Well, today we got a really cool one as we build the Warhammer Townscape Gatehouse. That's right, the Gatehouse, the very first building you're going to encounter as you come into town. Which is interesting that it's actually number 2 in the build. So without further ado, let's go down to the bench where we get to see this great building. Now, there are a few little issues with this building, so make sure you watch this video all the way to the end before you start to assemble your gatehouse. Well, let's go check it out. We'll start our build by taking a look at the instructions for the gatehouse, and it says the gatehouse has 2 box sections which are assembled separately and glued together. Note the internal walls which fit inside the gateway. Now the pieces for the gateway are on page 17, there's 5 of them, and on page 11 there is 1, but the instructions neglect to say that on page 2 this section of the gatehouse is printed on. So now we'll go on a journey to find our parts. So here on page 2 we've got the side of the building with the door and the little roof section, and then if we go over to page 11 we have the chimney right there. That's the only part on that page. And then page 17 is devoted right to this entire building, where we have the right and left hand sides. We also have the roof, which you fold here, and then those inner walls which are going in here and in there. We also have a sign saying Scrivener. We also have these doors which might be able to go into here, I'm not too sure, but inside the door frames we also have some regular sized doors, so these could be used on different buildings or houses depending on what you want to do. So what I'm going to do is cut out the image here, and I'm going to use my sharp knife. Now I ended up sharpening all the knives that I had last night. Stayed up for 2 hours sharpening all these number 11 hobby blades. I had quite the collection, even some that had survived the High River flood but were really rusty. I got those all done too. So this is the image on page 2, and I'm just going to start by cutting these tabs off like I did on the other building, the farmhouse, in the last video. And the reason for that is this will all be mounted on foamcore board, so the foam core will take up that distance of these actual vintage flaps. And the foam core is a lot stiffer and better than flimsily trying to fold the cardboard and glue it together. So far, so good. Looks like a little cool building. I've been wanting to build this one for a while. Lots of fun. So once I get this cut out, I will also cut out the other images, and I'll do that off camera just to save a little bit of time here, since I don't have a time-lapse feature on my camera or digital editing software. I'm old school. Still using Windows Movie Maker from like my Windows 7 computer. Anyway, that's all right. I don't mind. Okay, so there's our house out right there. And while I'm at it, I might as well quickly cut this roof panel out. Seem to have gone a little off camera there. Now, like I said in the last video, I do prefer using the plastic ruler over the steel ruler because I can see where I'm going through the clear plastic. But the downside is, with clear plastic, of course, and a sharp metal knife, you start cutting the edges of your plastic, in or something if your wrist twists a little bit, and it's so quick. Whereas with the metal one, you can't cut it, but you can't see through it. So there's advantages and disadvantages to everything. Now remember, these shingles go a certain way when you glue the roof on. Okay, so there we go. And now we've got our roof piece out. And then on the sheet we're left with 3 doors and a little notice here. And these could all be glued onto other buildings, or even somewhere like on this one, if you wanted one of those posters here. You know, all kinds of cool ideas. When you're cutting out these sides of the building, be careful in here, because this is going to be our first building where we're cutting into the inside here. So you want to follow this curve carefully. Now, one thing, you might want to wait on cutting this until we've glued this down to the foam core board, just so that you don't have to cut this arch twice. Another thing is, on the printed out pages, they're all flat. But I do believe on the original Games Workshop pages, there might have been a perforation which runs right down here, so that when you've got the 2 pieces of the gatehouse, because they're the same sides, more or less, but when they're together, they're going to be like this. So this wall is going to fold here, and that one's going to fold there, and then they're going to create the box of the building, which should be something like that. Now, in order to find where that area is going to be, I'm going to use my right angle here from our geometry set, and I'll line it up against the edge there. Oops, right over here. Line that up, and then line this area up to here. And then I can cut straight down, and this will be a nice little 90-degree section here and here, and that'll make our building nice and square. So just as an experiment, I cut the little half-round doors out and laid them up on the edge, and they don't meet in the center, and they don't really curve to match the top of that. So I believe these doors are from somewhere else. But I did notice that here on the side of the building, you'll see the pattern up here, and then this is just a white blank space. And that matches this piece here for our staircase. So remember, this door gets folded over that way, you know, and then this will line up to the edge of the building. Now I've glued our pieces onto the black foam core board, and I've also glued our roof sections onto this pizza box that has a very wood-looking color to it on the back side. And I wanted to glue these pieces onto the color side, so when I cut them out, you will only see this from underneath. Now, getting back to this part, I noticed that this is actually the back part of the wall, and it matches the thickness of the door. So when I go to cut this out, I'll take my 90-degree angle and just line it up. I do believe there's a very faint line right here, so that will go up there, and then I can take my hobby knife and just cut right through all this and cut this out as its own separate piece, and then do the same down here for the door as well. So one thing I've noticed with these is you have to be pretty careful, because some of these images are not quite equal with the Games Workshop. So here we've got this door, and if I overlay the door right onto the edge of the wall, I notice that this is a little bit narrower, I guess you'd say, than the bottom of this. So if I cut straight down here, this little bit of the wall that's a little wider will cause this staircase to be, you know, angled into the roof. But if I take the measurement of the door and move it to where that line is, maybe you can see it there, it's at least 1 millimeter out. Now, I know that may not seem too important to some of you, but that could actually mess it up so that the roof line, like I said, is coming in at like an angle like this to the edge instead of being square. And our little roof section here is square. So basically underneath, this would be coming in like this. Maybe not as exaggerated, but it will look off. So one thing to do is measure this door and then cut off the edge on here that's overlapped, just so that both of these are the same width. Now we have the 3 pieces of the staircase section separated, and you'll see that the back wall here is now the same width as the door, as best as I could get that. I should have actually measured this and then cut it off of the foam core board as one piece, and then I wouldn't have to have the knife wander in and out a little bit as I was cutting this down. So normally we would bevel all the edges here, but in this case, because this attaches to the building square along the edges, we need to keep this outer edge square and this outer edge square. On here we can bevel down this way to the outer wall. So just taking our knife, watch your fingers there, and carefully cutting a long 45-degree angle down here, being careful not to cut the image on the front. There's one, and we would cut this other one here, and then on the wall section you want to cut just this one. So I'll turn it upside down just to make this easier for me to cut, keeping an eye on the blade and the edge of that image. Oops. Okay. Now we can sand this and freshen it up, but I just want to show you how this now looks. So that would be it. And then where it's square, that's what's going to glue up against the edge of our little building. And we do the same for the front door here. Bevel that in, bevel this side, but keep the back right there nice and straight. Here we have our little staircase structure without the roof. And what I did was I cut out a square of cardboard here. I measured it with the length of the wall here and then one of the ends. Then I glued the end on with hot glue, and I pushed down until it squished nice and flat against the cardboard. Then I glued the other end and pushed down, and then glued this section in and pushed down on it and brought the sides together. And I added a little bit of hot glue up along in here, and that gives it the strength. Now what I need to do is bevel this little edge off right here because it sticks up a bit, and that is just so when I get the cardboard roof on that it doesn't interfere. So there we go. And now what I would need to do, well, after I'd attach it to the building, is cut out the cardboard roof and glue it right on. And that should complete our little staircase part. So now we got to build the rest of the gatehouse. So now I've got both building halves cut to exactly the same size. Again, I had that issue with one wall being just a little bit wider than the other, but now I've cut it down to make it look right. So what I will do here is just move this out of the way, and I can get my right angle in here. I want to line it up right with the peak of the roof, and then make sure down below is nice and square. Okay, so I'm back a little bit. The other way, of course, to do this, now that it's cut equal, is this area up to the peak should be 5 centimeters, which would be right here, and then down again here. Then I can tie the ruler in between the two of them, but just check my marks here with the 45 degree. And it should line up. Okay, so I get my knife out, just tighten it up a little, and we're going to go from the peak down to there, and now I'll just cut this. I'm going to do a light cut first and then go deep right to the back. And there's our wall section removed. Now this wall section should be equal to our stairs, which comes up quite nice. Now what I'll need to do is bevel these edges, both of them this time. One down there and one down that way. And then on our walls here, they'll all have to be beveled. But the next part is to cut out the gatehouse opening. So here I'll just use that 45 degree. Come in here and cut this center out. Oops, I'm going a little crooked there. Okay. Now the walls that we do not want to bevel are the inside walls. So just cut this through for a minute. These walls here, these will be the connectors in between. Once we get both ends open, they're going to glue in here like that, right up against that edge. So we want to keep this nice and square and not bevel that part. And the other part is I will make another paper bottom for this, and I'll show you how that's done. Here we have two of our wall sections, and I've beveled the edges with a hobby knife, and you can see how rough this is. What I want to do is, here I've got 400 grade sandpaper, and I've got it on our cutting board. I'm just going to carefully drag this along, make sure to hit all the points at that angle, so then this can start to smooth out with the sandpaper, as you can see there. Just sand this up, smooth it all out, make it look nice. Now up inside the archway, when I cut it out, I had to use the tip of my knife and just go zigzag, zigzag, zigzag sort of thing to get this out. So it is rough up in there. And what I can do is take a bit of the sandpaper on my thumb and just round up in this edge until it's nice. And that should smooth it out inside here. You can also go down these edges, is what I'm trying to say. Just like so. And of course in there. And do the same for this wall. Now I notice that there's a bit of a brown rust stain up on the top edge of the building. So when we glue these to our base, remember to keep that bit upward and not glue it down like this at the base, because then you're putting your sidewalls in upside down. I want to cut out this roof section from the cardboard, but before I do, if you notice there is a seam up the middle. This is where you're going to score this, because the roof needs to fold like that in order to hit this peak right in here of our building. So what we'll do is we'll use that 45 degree angle again, and we'll just come up here and be very careful to where this is. And I'll just score. So with scoring, you don't want to cut all the way through, you just want to drag the knife down. Oops. See, I'm cutting into the side of the plastic there. You want to just drag the knife down so that you can bend it right along where you just went, but not use so much pressure like this. You know, you're not using the pressure to cut the cardboard off. So don't go like this, thinking that you're scoring it, only to find out that you've pretty much cut right through. Now, because these are PDFs, like I said before, if you do find yourself making a mistake, just simply print off another one and then do the same techniques that you did to get up to before you made a mistake. if you know what I mean. So if I've got this roof all glued down, and let's say I go to cut this and my ruler slips like this and I go, right? I'll just go and repeat the steps that I took to get up here, like gluing this onto the cardboard, etc., etc. And then I'll recut it on the new piece and make sure that the accident doesn't happen again, like my ruler slipping. So here we go. And now when we're ready, we will have this little roof section for the edge of our building. So I'm going to fold this part. Then I will take my angle over here and just rub along the edge, giving it some pressure. Now it's got a nice ridge on there. So when we do get to the stage where we glue the roof on, it will already be pretty much pre-formed and ready to go. One thing that I just noticed here is I actually did make a mistake making these walls the way I did. I should not have glued these on and then cut them out square like this. Because, if you notice, they're now sitting back here, like that. And with this bevel in here, I could cut and bevel these, but there would be almost no material on the edges of the base of the bottom of this thing. So one thing I can do is just put the cardboard up, the foam core board up against there like that. Then take my knife and just score back here, like so. Now I'm not going to cut through this. I'm going to try to use a bit of an advantage here if I can. And I'm off camera. Okay, so remember I was saying about scoring. Foam core is one piece of paper, foam in the center, and another piece of paper. So if I do this right, I could cut down here. Okay, just got to be careful where this knife's going. Cut right along the foam core and the paper. There, get rid of that piece. Now, this should go up to there and notch in there nicely. Now to actually get this paper to paper, you'll notice if you cut this like I did, that there's still a bit of the foam right on here. So you can take your knife and actually just scrape the foam off, right off that paper, just like so. And now you'll get the paper contact there that you need, instead of gluing onto a thin piece of foam that might actually break off and leave your paper sticking up. So there we go. Next we'll need to cut a bottom for this building, and just as a demonstration I want to say that you do not want this part of the cardboard up like I've done with the side, with the brown on the bottom. You actually, this time around, want to glue it with the brown on the top, because this open area here will show the brown as like a dirt road or something to that effect, whereas if you put it up with the image side, you're going to have that type of thing going all the way through on that tunnel, which you'll be able to easily spot. Next up, we need to make a cardboard bottom for our building. So from the front gateway, we need to measure from here to here, and on the sides measure from there to there. So if we take our little ruler here with the measurements on it, we see that this measurement here is 59 centimeters, and the one on the side is 50. So I will cut one of these out and then show you what it looks like. Here's our base for the building. This is the 59 by 50 rectangle. And as you can see, these buildings look big in the illustration and whatnot, but they're not really all that big. So there's our building going down here and one of the side walls. And there it is. So I am going to leave the brown side sticking up. And then I'll hot glue the bottoms in here and push it on. And then glue the inner walls to connect the two, the inner to the outer. So I will start with the outer walls first. So 1, 2, and then the inside bit, and then finish it off with the outer walls. And then I could glue this bit of it on for our staircase and then start putting the roofs down. Here's our gatehouse so far, and if you just noticed, I did try to put on this roof first, and then I realized I was running into a problem really quickly, so I thought I would rip it off in a hurry and try to fix it. But what I need to do actually is glue this roof on first. So here it is. And I also noticed there's a bit of a kick going on right there. So I can't really fix that at this stage. But I guess the only thing I could really try to do is just cover it with this bit of roof. And now the issue that we seem to be having is that this roof is kind of overlapping and swinging out at the bottom as it's hitting this roof over here. So I'm not too sure how to remedy that exactly. Perhaps I can cut a notch out in here. Maybe that's our best bet. So just cut this back a little. Like so. Cut a little angle right there. Now let's see if that doesn't just fix everything. I believe that angle should be back a bit, but I think that's got it there. So sometimes just something as simple as cutting a little notch in the corner might correct everything. I'm just going to cut it a little further up right here. Okay, so now let's try to do this better. Go across here, drop our hot glue down here, and maybe try to get a bead up here, even though I don't know if that's going to touch. Now we want to make sure that the shingles are going the right way. Okay, so it's right like that. Okay, this should be good for that. Now with the tip of the hot glue, should be able to melt this older glue on here. Slightly older by maybe a minute or so. So I'm just going to put it on the one side here. For now, we'll get the peak right up there onto the peak of the roof. Make sure the overhang's about even on both ends. And then I'll just rub this side down into there. Just like so. Now I'm getting all this peeling off inside. Oh, and I don't have that quite lined up perfectly. Peel up this goop that's coming over the edge. Okay, and now use that as a hinge, and we'll just come down here, here, and seal this right up, just like that. Starting to lose a bit of the image up here, so I'll get a bit of glue on a toothpick or something and get that under there and just squish this back together. Now while the glue is still warm, try to peel it off here. Just on this little edge, it's sticking up under the overhang. Over there is pretty good. Okay, now the only thing left is to create the chimney on here, but that basically is our gatehouse with the brown in here. Now you could use some of the grass from your tabletop and just cut a little thing and glue it inside just to make it look like a little grass trail growing inside. Or the other thing you could do is use a dirt mat and put that inside. Now there's just that little bit off the edge right here. Can't do anything about that because of the way it was. But overall, I think our gatehouse looks pretty nice. I love the staircase thing. Sort of a way to get to that top floor. Really neat stuff. Here we have our chimney, and what I did is I cut it off on the paper like this and left the little square up here. And I cut this part like this, and I took out the blue sections that were down in here. And what I'm going to do with this is make this into a sleeve. So basically, like the sleeve of your coat. Then we just need the part that will go into here. And what I find is it's basically take a piece of your foam core and cut it and make it fit. And then take that piece of foam core and stick it up there and then glue the paper sides to it. And then once you have the tube in there, right, or the foam core, you'll want to take your knife and cut at this angle, cut your foam core off and cut it off at the top, and then cut out your little square there and just glue it on there, and then you'll have a complete bit of foam core, this being full of foam core, and then you can attach that onto your roof like so. Now we do have a bit of luck because the narrowest part of the chimney is 9 millimeters and the widest part is 10. So here I've got two pieces of foam core cut at 9 millimeters this way, and when I take the two and put them on top of each other, you get 10 millimeters going this way. So basically, it's a little bit tight though, but all I need to do is wrap this around like that and just squeeze this edge together, and of course put some glue in between our two pieces, and then we've got exactly what our chimney is, a sleeve around the two pieces of foam core. And then from there I can just cut that down that way and cut this through this way, and then take that little square I was telling you about, cut it out of there and glue it right to the top there. Here we have our finished gatehouse, and I do believe that this sign here is actually supposed to go there, and that would denote which town we're in. But I'm going to save these little signs for later, because I know interspersed throughout all those pages are different signs and whatever else. So I'm going to leave the signs until maybe the last video and just see what I can do to tie things together. So moving this off to the side. Now I notice that the way this is constructed, it leaves a lot of these like imperfections in the building. So I'll get into how to resolve that in a minute. But overall you can see it's pretty nice. I used a black Sharpie, which might have been a little too much, just to cover the white paper that was peering up through here. Another thing I find kind of funny is you've got this fireplace, a smokestack, but right on the top, that piece that covers it basically seals up the chimney. This should actually have a black square in here and just have a bit of the white edge around to represent the bricks or whatever it's made of, just in that opening there, you know, for the smoke to come out. But overall, I mean, it's not bad. These line up really nice. Of course they would, because you'd fold it over. And I like the little door here and the staircase going up. Now I do believe this would be, if there was a wall coming out here, you know, for your gatehouse, connected maybe to a castle or something, or not a castle, but a town, you know, that this would be at the back. Because when, let's say your town is coming under siege, you're going to want to lock these doors. And if you had this as the front, you know, a person would have to, so here's the walls and the town going back this way. The person would have to come out somehow and then go up in the front here and go up the door. So it'd be logical that the wall would be this way with the, you know, field or whatever facing out that way and the town coming back this way. Okay, so some notes here. What I think should happen in the construction of this building for future, so that you don't get this funny bending out here and bending out there and everything else, or maybe not meeting the edge of the wall or something. I think it would be better, if you're going to build this building, is to take, like I did here, and cut this section off, you know, on that image, because remember, this was all flat. So you want to cut this wall out and your door out, and then with these, cut the wall section, so you got the front with the peaked roof, and then remember, this wall was folded over, so it was like that, right? And then you folded it. So cut that wall off and cut this off. And then on your foam core, glue this one down on the sheet of foam core and this right beside it on the same piece of foam core. So here's a flat sheet of foam core. You would glue down this image here, and then the stairs down here, if you know what I mean. Then cut it out. So you've got the building would come up here, notch down, cut out for that door right there. And then on the other side, same thing, right? But this way it's like the peak of the roof, and then that bit, and then it comes down. So that way, when you glue it, this and this are one connected piece, so that all this is flat on the foam core. And then you would glue this as one piece, and then, well, I guess your inners as well, right? And then that side and that side. Yeah, okay, so you would have an issue there. But at any rate, I think it would be better if that was like a flat board across and a flat board across here. For this side, you'd have to become a little creative back there. But this is just your basic wall plugging in on one side and wall plugging in on that side. But I think that would end up making this a lot better on the front edges here and here, and not make it so disjointed. Because in simple layman's terms, I think these buildings have too many working parts, and it would be simplified and possibly better if it was one part instead of two. So I'll leave that up to you to decide on how to do that. But yeah, if I was going to redo it, that's the way I would do it. Overall, though, I like this little building. I think it's pretty cool and a good addition to the town. Well, I hope you enjoyed our little build of the Warhammer Townscape Gatehouse, which is always a cool little one. And like I said, if I was to attempt to rebuild this or build another one, I would make it so that that front was on one sheet, flat across, same as the back area here. And if any of you are going to attempt it, let me know how you solve this part inside here for that one wall. Now get ready for our next video where we are going to show you how to build the large house. That's right, we're going to get into our residential area and have a lot of fun with that one. So until next week, everybody, next time anyway, happy model building, and we'll see you in the next video. And don't forget to like and subscribe.